Plea-bargaining is inextricably tied to racialized logics of carceral governance, the weaponized procedural discretion, efficiency, and presumption of black guilt to subjugate defendants within the criminal justice system built on slavery maintained through white supremacist order. Agreement 20. Deep-rooted racial bias cast African Americans as individual criminal animalistic, compromise the justice taking negotiation process, implicit racial bias in form of presumption of guilt. Psychologists posit actors involved in plea bargaining more likely than other actors have biases influence the decision. African Americans no criminal justice system supposed guarantees of justice and innocent until proven guilty do not apply to them. Defendants suffer a racialized presumption of guilt in every part of the system, including plea bargaining, anchored in a society and justice system built on slavery, reinforced during the 20s when the system developed into a professional enterprise. Confession of guilt forces black defendants into reaffirming their position as criminal and less than human, reproducing cycles of oppression and allowing systemic racism to go unchecked. Article 2. Whiteness is the mark where power establishes who can claim full human status. Blackness operates as a limit, prevents and contrasts the wants to define themselves as full human role, names a personal offense, code held in corporate carries racial undertones. Court presumes guilt of black defendants, treat defendants as they're guilty in their very person. Plea bargains are the means by which racializing establishes delineate who can as fully human performs a double confession, admission of guilt, and self-affirmation is one. Identity is a mobile criminal. Black and plea bargains close to the racialized system of control. Over the very myth of criminality, the place in the current situation, confessions and law system to maintain the veneer of colorblind neutrality since accused as confirmed guilt that affirms the connection between blackness and criminality, not human. Vote affirmative for decarceral fugitivity, rejecting the carceral state's racial logic, and centering black studies as a method for both undoing the juridical order of guilt and opening the space for black world-making beyond the state. Howard 13. Path is made with refusal of the choices as offered, refusal to call to order, the reinstatation of the law, clear distance, allowing us to continue the procedure call, and will continue after left the room goal is up to end the trouble and the world that created those troubles, refusal of logic, the stages of refusal as an activity, as the absence of plan of politics, engage fugitivity with the work as done with the revolution, so blacks goes wrong. Racism is not just a problem for the oppressed but a collective sickness. We must recognize our shared stake in tearing down racial hierarchies and engage in imagining and building black futures together to actualize on Abolition 13. When you seek to make things better, you're not just doing it for the other, you must be doing it for yourself. No one will be able to tear this shit down until they realize the structures they pose are bad for all of us. The coalition of racial audio recognition that's fucked up for you, the same way we recognize that's fucked up for us, you can recognize that this shit is going too. Let's try our dive into black world making in deliberative forms, Abolition 13. We must change things or die, change the document form that we think is revolutionary, prepare by entering into studying both thinking with others, separate from the thinking that the institution requires of you. World making and world shattering movement of things exist in language and in fantasy, and fugitivity itself. Fugitivity is not only escape, it is a being that has learned that organization of obstacles to organizing yourself. Learn there are spaces that exist separate from the logistical and the position that which was refused to us a priori in hope and a reimagined possibility. The affirmative is a method of struggle for disrupting racial hegemonies and educational spaces and creates the building blocks for real world resistance and change in Pentel 21. Movements of struggle have included studying the specific civil rights movement, poor black workers, being semi-literate, still managed to study together, BLM called out police brutality, engaged in studying formal arguments, addressing one-factor oppression, and inconsistent with how oppression works with multiple delivery systems, working closely alongside people with whom they share racialized and gender identities, joining together and organizing. When students come to contact with study that moves away from the midst of the nation, they undergo significant transformation in how they understand the world. When white students experience learning that disrupts narratives they've been told what follows. Rise of democracy and reform are hollow illusion to capture only fugitivity in the surround, which imagines revolution and alternative world beyond politics, sustains black life and unleashes revolutionary possibility outside the law by 2013. False conversion of the critique of motorized life is predicated on forgetting the life that surrounds the blockchain is the ongoing attack on the common black party, theories of revolution of the surround, recognition that the preservation of black life is articulated in innovation, lives in around the world, force of police station, and prison towers, spanning the civil rights revolution without politics against law, because they're generating law, and given to the commonwealth poverty and blackness around. We must use it as a space for prophetic organization, refusing the enclosure of politics and enacting worlds that are not yet already here, but are 13. Thinking through the skill of teaching towards a collective orientation to the knowledge, object is the future project, commitment to prophetic organization, teaching moves in, they happen to work from disclosure of comments that fusion and alignment and act, the criminal life, the life stolen where the commons give refuge allows opportunity to be unlawfully overcome by others, become conflict for subjection. Racism is the state's nature of production and exploitation of vulnerabilities and premature death. What is the difference between this and slavery? What is the object of abolition? Not so much the abolition of prison, but the abolition of a society that can have prison, that can have slavery, and therefore abolition is a founding of a new society. The uncanny discern the critical goal above it that one consent is dissent and cooperation, the secret once called solidarity, prophetic organization that works with black abolition. Theorizing is a precondition for material transformation, collective imagination, and planning must come first in order to enable resistance and world-making beyond both capital and command and capture by institutions of power. Bonus 13. Planning resistance compulsion by scarcity through seizing the means of social reproduction. Planners are part of the land and means of common experiment with the future present forms of life. As these means that were eventually stolen by state socialism, whose perversion of planning was a crime. Planning is self-sufficiency at the social level starts with solidity. Policy raised is arrayed in the exclusive, seeks to destroy ongoing plans and fugitive initiations of black operations. Debate is undergirded by knowledge infrastructure and engineered by racial logic to regulate which information is considered important or valid, which means addressing that is a prior question. 24. Knowledge infrastructures are not neutral, embedded within politics, are informed by social environment, infrastructure built and maintained, creating and communicating information, infrastructural power related to knowledge, prioritized and validated through its process and amplifies becoming knowing, grounded in racial logic that encode and reinforce existing relation to power and hierarchies. Thus, the role of the ballot is to forward the best method to rupture dominant racial logics and the traditional exclusion of black radical thought and its Abolition in 23. It is time to confront the archetypal practices of debate which continue to discount minority and radical thought as illegitimate and a threat to activity. Critical debate ruptures traditional debate because we challenge power relations that exist in the community. Rapid debate highlights the importance of the discourses that move the social and do the necessary work of agitating dominant power, enables us to consider new paradigms for engaging debate itself, reformulate traditional notions of fiat through purported reinterpretation of the resolution and for grasping times and transfer race in the U.S. Alternative approach to policy debate that mirrors the debate of theoretical scholars find new methods of resisting the status quo. Only fugitivity can open up fluid networks of knowledge to people from the university or sheet 23. Fugitive practice defies domination, setting fluid networks of knowledge within the university through institutional reconfiguration becomes a method of producing place breathing fugitivity inside the university and manage questioning power. The ballot is our strongest weapon, wiping the away. Ballots enact the policies of our community by words they change the state of debate. Louisville enacts a full withdrawal of traditional norms of debate. The ballot is the most significant tool in influencing practices and procedures, competitive nature, hierarchies, and teams remain responsive to trends amongst the judging pool. Neuroscience proves that discourse is the internal link to subjectivity. Wilson 24. Brain is bound up in discursive power struggles, becomes a notable in how bodies are hierarchies. Discourses of civility reinforce hierarchical notions of what mind matters, what minds matters. Discursive frameworks uphold regimes of power. The brain devises modes of rhetorical resistance. Yeah, what's that? Yeah, good.
What's the Wheatley project?
The Wheatley project was this sort of era in debate where the legal team engaged in breaking the norms of debate. They would come to debate rounds, get laypersons to be judges, sort of engage in poetry, draft their speeches, a lot of different things that broke the norms of debate, but they also exported their discussions into the real world through social movements and whatnot.
So were those movements in the real world a product of their rounds or a product of their discussions?
It was a product of their internal motivations, but it was facilitated by debate rounds because that is where the discussions and deliberations took place.
Wait, how? How is it specific to debate rounds? Like, why couldn't it have just been discussions outside
Well, because
of debate?
the question is, one, derived Wheatley and the Anastasios together explains how debate as a space is informed by the debaters and debating it, and these practices and norms are based off of the arguments we read and the interactions we have. They set a standard for critical debate.
That's fine. The app, it spills over, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Okay. Has anything changed since you started reading stuff?
Yeah, more people are watching and they love me.
Well, it's semis of Yale. I don't think it's because of you.
Damn.
Why, like, have you created any material change for Black people outside of this round?
Have I?
Has the staff, the reading of the staff?
My reading of the staff? I don't know necessarily.
You don't know?
I started reading the staff yesterday, so I don't know. But like,
why have you been reading it the entire season?
My season just started.
Okay, sure. How many rounds have you read this for?
I want to say 6 or 7.
Okay, so
that was good.
Yeah, sure. In 6 or 7 rounds, how much change have you created for Black people? You don't know.
I don't know about
Perfect. Perfect. Let's talk about the argument about Black world making. What does it mean?
Yeah, it's this idea that we should engage in the theorization of what alternative worlds absent state control and carceral institutions should look like. So how should we structure our society in this world where Black people are not oppressed by such institutions and structures? How to create revolutionary strategies to achieve those, and so on.
What is the affirmative's revolutionary strategy?
Well, the affirmative sets a model for what debate should look like. We don't propose a specific revolutionary strategy for.
So you have no strategy to
our
resolve
strategy
the problem
is
that you diagnose?
No, our strategy is to use debate as a fugitive space to have these discussions and deliberations, which initiates these theorizations and allows us to export in the real world.
What causes anti-Black violence?
There's a lot of causes of anti-Black violence.
There are a lot of causes.
Broward 22 evidence specifies that the criminal justice system, how the government is structured, is a major cause of anti-Black violence.
So how the government is structured?
I mean, that's what the Broward 22. I don't know.
That's what you'll defend.
What do you mean?
That the root cause of anti-Black violence.
I never said root cause. I said the Broward 22 evidence says the plea bargaining, the self-affirmation.
Well, I'm asking you, what is the cause of anti-Black violence?
We don't make an ontological claim. That's
I didn't ask if you made an ontological claim. I asked what the cause of your uniqueness is.
Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. That's cross. I'll send it. 1, 2, reading the case. Case is going to be an overview, and then that's it. That's it. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it says upload failed. Right. One sec. I'm just gonna close it and give it some I don't think it's working. Can I just email it to? Okay.
Yeah, you can email it. I'll try uploading it from my side.
Oh yeah, sure. You could be. What's up? Oh yeah. Okay, I just sent it.
Sorry, what's the order again?
3, then case. Case is the overview, and then a few cards.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah. Can I also be able to put on a speech rock? Same thing for me.
Okay. Yeah. You good? Interpretation degrees open source disclosure runs all the reading must open source all labor on violations screenshots below all required run 2 5 and doubles all same for docs with no open source not open sourcing later on is unique about 8 2 increases factor against the degrees on the already just managed resource securities resource those who need resource securities for case because you make to be more accessible for those already to manage access voters spirit and driving people outside of the baby we're on debate from having users means all other benefits can only be achieved by first maintaining the accessibility to space for electrocution voter agency purpose of LGB person that's critical to see controls future links subject to sharing because we understand why we should no change in specific and drop what determines for us being these practices in the future because it's not where the person lost you don't say you have to otherwise you read a bunch of good accessible practices not very reading source one use ways encourage race on our ways reasonable to standardize these two the most accessible rule 30 reading on street judge and reasonably the expression of other judging submission which takes around out of the hand there is one logic you don't read your accessible to bidding standardized people use expense they factor within our idea which increase the existence of patterns using our set rules one installs all previous while in our case one matters one time to in our case has not around you said pattern is useful say after when reasonably when in our use for always contact ourselves if we're working about the way that you engage in debate which is no process now say all the interpretation there is also only be really just factor violation the just factor defined by regular just like the visual reason things that on the start of madness which we live about running justified confidence 3 words right around referral and absence skills more friends makes more persuasive and hidden moral conviction on moral friends makes more certain and extreme that's great turns out it's shit brand and also makes guys more conviction legally more moralized on moral friends increase certainty and extremity and understanding and effect on important centrality moral conviction unique and dimension attitudes right 2 explains for power studies prove that moral reason increase empathy and motivates activism alternative counter including that only in June 18 complex moral reason related to capacity hearing observed diversity and cultural empathy source groups diverse community higher activism development moral reasoning assessment motivation act on changing reasoning is not related to requirements for IT egalitarian values reasoning significantly policy related to empathy and activism 3 reasoning is key to prevent injustice and emotional appeals fall short to send or 15 just sensitivity linked to precede just moral motivation just strong motivation act and critical moral religious motivation on empathy correlated with just sensitivity to others empathy reasoning why and empathy moral judgment significant whether different allocating more effective to focus on reasoning listening empathetic consider others and emphasizing emotional sharing with the source of others distrust and not necessarily motivation for all political principles just for all okay. Your purpose articulation of anti-racist imaginations disconnect us from material practice ideological investments have already been made. It's counteracting the alternatives to build solidarity around a new socialist movement focused on making concrete demands of progress that can transform American society. That action is necessary to propel movements to challenge oppression, dismantle racist political formations, and stabilize V17. Race anti-racism politics not allowing the egalitarian vision, anti-racist politics as the antagonist of Marxist transformation, anti-racism fits more neoliberalism and social the political tendencies based on descriptive identities for Marxist and socialist politics and inimical to the position of racial descriptively defined population narrative liberalism failing with respect to racial inequalities has been definitive characteristics to us narrative and under extraordinary historical misrepresentations discourse about politics most notably anti-racist statement on the appearance of the left as not a regime but because of the prominence of the concerns of oppression religion race historical analogy standing move organization for why we should see disparities as evidence for working gender based around the products and political economy process that limits a regime of steadily intensifying regressive redistribution that constitutes Palestinian neoliberalism assertion of the centrality of studies among the various more allegory fabled and historical economic discrimination economic exploitation see elements of secular system of oppression tension that black politics was the core class contribution failure to address class dynamics of black politics as a consequence for subsequent understanding relation to race politics politics that focus cultural authority earlier moments of black insurgency to allow neoliberal ideal of social justice march on Washington organized by liberal protests and methods was the sanitation workers strike earlier class related were central much of the militant action made up in the period of the southern civil rights activism public card there capitalism best explains contemporary political tactics and prison industrial complex by commitment to the idea of race is central factor uniquely obscure series material analysis and privileges theory at the expense of lived experience. 2017. You need to remember that fundamental cost of severing your body here. 70s recession and labor force contraction were to produce the hyper-generalization of the lack of blackness, but this is indebted uneducated criminal Jim Crow analogy fails to provide an accurate and curable capitalist social work despite the consequence of mass incarceration, neoliberal skyline welfare, state integrity of boundaries of incarceration and political violence, now expanding institutional racism of urban black forces integral to the parliament, broader political economy. The racial injustice frame does not explain the political violence. Blacks are not majority of the victims of unemployed, homeless, and the working in the informal economy are more likely to regularly surveilled, harassed, and arrested. This is your elevation and attempt to implement the ideological fate. Even when actual social conditions require a different approach, alternative police are private police. They can be contracted by local and state governments that plan cannot eliminate them. For 15, your armed security industry increasingly supplementing public police forces into many poor urban areas. Small towns are beyond supplementing, often instead of replacing them as a private security entity. Entirely private police force being jurisdiction over Kansas law neighborhoods and even entire towns of local and state governments to such groups and simply the budget moves and are granted the industry traditional police power. Private police recreate the police state that the act critiques, but its worst constitutional protections are perfect, but they do something. Whitehead, 15 what rights do you have in a private company to entrust with the powers of the government company, not held to the same legal standard, fully over subject to any stop and risk or risk cause you disappear to the U.S. detention that the corporate elite transferred in the face of policing in America enterprise has appeared that others beyond the reach of the Fourth Amendment has already been monitored and horror with scam protection. Begin for the method provides dissipates in the face of privatized police and military police become the government standing army without the further cap causes of mass starvation, ecological destruction, and exploitative violence. Kansas 16. Cap has devastated land speeches are going to state 1,000 times faster than 6 million hectares of forest lost each year. 50% below the poverty line. The population is expected to reach 10 billion times immediately when the agriculture, community extraction, development can cause habitat loss, reliance on fossil fuels, major contributor to competition businesses reluctant, and cycles of exploitation of large corporations continuing engaging in exploitative behavior by observing continuing economic growth and environmental discussion. Case. No autonomy or such information on all causes families will in the next 50 years at least specifically we debate against arguments we read IEKs improving any kind of attachment to them 3 elements of each case opposite division of the topic objections watch hundreds of rounds every actual changes happen because of structural discussion outside of based on individual rounds and to rebuild the OA4 exhaustion depending on the judge value use unhealthy based patterns of relationship which makes losing on makes losing violent and cause exhaustion because people don't change when they increase the demand for ballot policy necessary to view the ballots and anything else as a second referendum is bad. No ballot policy echo chambers you can force double them outweighs the Wilson evidence on specificity competitive environment 720. Ultimate evidence suggests that when exposed to different power, these people become more convinced that the charges of against scorepoints rather than improving people. Avoid revising charge police, someone confirming that the explained or described without engaging echo chambers drive people to more strictly judgmental problems that do not have the right answer. There's no organization leads to better outcomes and limitations of time and attention as to a relation must emerge for highly informational environments and must make choices regarding who to engage with. The term Black resistance requires deliberation over political strategy. Multiple examples prove the validity of that method. 10-15. That radical political action exists in cities like Jackson, Mississippi, like you organized and recognized by the answer for Maryland State legislators to kill person Malcolm X grassroots movements elected movement and component of organizing the CTU corporation deciding for people to understand that seizing would involve political structure. CTU organized years to be able to get 90% of votes. Malcolm X grassroots movements worked for years to build the critical capacity required to elect Joey first city council and then mayor to build the political platform into action. Tired after solidarity, revolutionary planning and praxis necessitates teacher flinches and contradictions in the mass mobilization. Black revolutionary studies work with white allies to strategic to do so. Thompson 18. Learning acid of radical black politics, then repeated nationalized academic approach to politics, but Western world has elitism, black radical perspectives that exist in racism did not preclude the lines of controversy we were expecting, but might not be resolved depending on material interests. This was not engaging identity or perfection of analogy or mobilization of political accomplishments of revolution. Okay, cut that part of revolution. Cut Whitehead at standing army. And then cut and then cut the Reed 17 card at activism.
Okay.
I'm good to cross.
Yeah. Can you explain exhaustion on presumption?
Yeah, it's just a preempt to one of our arguments that claim we should pretend that the ballot solves. And it says that the demand for ballot solvency is necessary because when ballot inevitably does not solve, when we're pretending that it does, it causes more exhaustion and pushes people
down.
out
What
of
does
the space.
the demand for doubling down look like?
It looks like people constantly reading tea, constantly reading state good, head good arguments against your positions.
Okay.
And just to be clear, it's not an argument that
Oh,
I
that's
double down against you, but rather it's a claim about
Yeah.
the state's basis.
The base evidence, what is their methodology?
It cites multiple empirical and analytical studies. That's the first
Can you
one.
outline like those studies of the cover?
I mean, they're cited in the small text. Gordon Smith 2019, McIntyre 2021. Like there's like 50 in here.
Okay, that's fine. This case turn, what is this movement in Jackson, Mississippi? What has it accomplished so far?
Wait, which part are you referring to?
Stance.
Well, it's not an explanation of an ongoing movement. It's describing empirical examples of socialist and class solidarity movements in the past that have succeeded.
Okay. What is a normatively justified framework?
Yeah, you should start from a metaphysical truth claim about the nature of the world, and read a syllogism which justifies why your impacts are bad.
Okay, what does it mean to like read a statement that defines the world? Like, what does that look like?
An example would be the world is axiarchic. The conclusion of that is that domination is bad, which means that oppression is bad. It's a reason for why you should philosophically justify.
Why does my framework, like, or my normally justified framework need to make a statement about the world and not just the state?
Well, that's how frameworks work, right? They have to describe where ethics come from, and then from there construct a syllogism, which can create a prescriptive conclusion about what agents ought to do.
Okay.
So you have to use that to justify why oppression is bad.
Explain the warrant and the density and Yoder evidence.
Yeah, this evidence is really good. It says that mere emotional appeals have been experimentally proven to not only do nothing to have people join your movement or join or endorse a method, but are actively counterproductive, and the only thing which can convince them to actually engage in solidarity with your movement is rigorous philosophical justification for why those things are bad.
Okay. I'll take that. 40. Originally, case. Case, lay, disclosure, normatively justified frameworks, and cap.
Case Golfson.
Yeah, let me set it up. Okay. A lot of this stuff is like all over the place, but just focus on like the cards because I would anyways on this as well. Okay, it's on the speech route.
Okay.
Everyone good? Okay. The aft defends a model that centers to play the debate on black world making and the theorization of resistance strategies. The aft method is a decarceral UCB retreat debate as a space to study the magic resistance strategies outside the case of law, resistant debates over rich rules, carceral logics, like debarking efficiency or forcing to prove solvency or force control where you refuse those logics. Instead, we center black radical thought and lived experiences for evidence. Debate should be a place where we build alternative worlds together and testing strategies for resistance and collective survival. Yes, spill over the aft forces non-black debaters to confront myths which creates understandings that tell who can help further that agrees and test strategy we can export in the real world. That's like civil rights movements and BLM, improvement in debate by the Louisville Project, and leaders of beautiful struggle from Towson University who used debate as a starting point for the grassroots movements and build them in the real world. 3. Discourse of brain chemistry through describing power relations. That's Wilson. 4. Balance shape competitive incentives which shapes community norms. Roots of subinformation solitude. That's right. Berkeley on presumption. 1. Presume math. 2. Presume to a world of and anti-blackness. 2. Presumption of tracial logic that must be avoided critical discussion. 3. No presumption because we spill over. 4. Is internet impact which means other rounds are irrelevant. And everyone I win means no more blue care. They say all causes of subjectivity, but we don't say we change entire people's lives and beliefs. To say that our model is able to utilize debate as a space to create real world change through movement building. There are no evidence. Actually, there's exhaustion argument. There's no war whatsoever why we're dependent on the ballot, but the fact that we say that the ballot voting for us is a good thing because it allows for real world change. There's no foreign dependency, but you should still vote for us. And then the no-based evidence, 1 before wasn't because it's based on MRI brain scans, which means it's independent scientific research, which means it's actual factual. Read their evidence is based on case studies, which is not necessarily scientific. We both state their cards from June 26. Ours is from November 3rd, but nobody's changed their mind. People remember networks and change their minds significantly. Environmental change, create condition for engagement with view direction. People who they brought up to believe change absolutely environmental significant oblivious about reason believe or not about to authority. We shouldn't accept their absolute environments and immutable push back and shape their environment through genealogical critique. Overview. The terms, the Spence evidence. 1, this also mentions when they use grassroots movements and building solidarity. We don't say that people should engage in political activism, but we say that working through an institution of the state is a bad thing, which they completely disregard, which means that the Spence evidence is just an example of our method working in the real world to be engaged in forms of deliberation and solidarity, which means we can build through debate. Then it says strive for building solidarity, but they've conceded the fact that we build solidarity through our discussions and community building, but we say that working through the state is bad. Overview of theory. 1 punishment does not say that we should lose on possible fairness, education violations based on anti-black carcerality that wants to punish us and correct us, reject carcerality, favor of fugitive society, plan. 2, the model theory is rule writing, where white folk will write the rules for students of color, reject that model on normative justified frameworks. The lay disclosure counter-interpretation. I don't have to open source lay dogs in my school. The officers will get grabbed out at locals, and they don't even have a wiki, which means something for them on perhaps you and research disparities. While 1 layer rounds are mostly about persuasion, how much you can actually persuade the judge, not necessarily about the card you read, which means there's no argument based on plus there's the same software argument that everyone reads. Also, you could email me my wiki says you can email me if you want the docs. On Phil Ed is not a voter. The LD is not based off morals. I only do LD because I couldn't find a provider for policy debate and critical thinking. There's other ways to achieve that too. On normally justified framework, we meet, we're normally justified. We make a claim about the state that racism is bad, and the state is racist. Normally justified framework, sound interpretation. I don't have to read it normally justified framework. Honestly, take into account real world context. 2, we don't create change by referencing philosophers. We create change through material struggle. 3, non-anti-Oscar white dominant literature based rejecting, which we use their black scholars and their radical ideologies underrepresented. Also, there's spillover grants of Aristotle, and I'm looking to build solidarity by reading the solutions, but he actually builds solidarity through our movements of deliberation and connecting to people and building communities. Okay? While nature making the root cause of the aftermath of slavery could make possible modern capitalism by turning black life into a fundamental entity that could be used in modified labor extraction and profit to reach the ultimate material strategy that we imagine happen through the fiat. But we can enact the app as a model for debate at the same time. There's no trade-off insofar as the mechanisms are articulated by debaters need to physically do the all three permanent the fugitivity gives rise to real world movements capable of toppling systems that create new world acts and capital. We pave the way for abolition of the system which includes the things that they critique for. Permanent to the all to the ass model of liberation theorization looks like discussing and debating over the best to achieve a strong police force and any solidarity to build militia. They keep saying solidarity is important, but where do we get this solidarity from? It's from the communities, and that's what the app does. We create deliberation within the community to make stronger bonds, to improve our collective planning and testing, and deliberation to keep for any effective movement in the system, and independently the future deliberation builds solidarity within communities needed to execute goals.
Okay, what are we doing now? Any independent voting issues besides the punishment is that?
The second responsibility for the theory is also.
I thought you didn't read that.
I did the other model theories for writing. And the one presumption that it's racial logic.
Sure. do the voting issue on case, like the presumption voting issue, the cap K, the lay disclosure shell, the normatively justified framework shell, and if I have time, back to case.
Can you repeat that slowly?
Yeah. The presumption voting issue on case. The cap K, the lay disclosure shell, the normatively justified framework shell, and then back to the case 5 times.
Okay.
Good. The case presumption is not racial logic. You've conceded the 4-point on the presumption block, which was the exhaustion turn. Our argument is solely that you must have the demand for valid solvency to prevent exhaustion from happening in the future. Presumption is just a check against it to make sure that you're not giving false hope to minorities by saying that we are investing in a system of resistance to racialized logics. We're not going for a presumption argument, which means it shouldn't be a voting issue. This is just an argument for if they don't win, then the valid solves, then you should vote neg on presumption, but they have, which means it's not a reason why I've done something actively bad, and also all of the theory shell arguments should outweigh it because it proves that the way they have deployed their method in the context of the debate is inherently flawed. Now, the cap K, kicking all persons are testing competition on a separate app. See the lay cases shell, nothing here was offense. They continue over guys, you do not win for proving that you are accessible, and they did not make an OCI argument, which means it's not relevant. The JF shell. Our interpretation is that debaters must only read normally justified frameworks. I'll answer their one bad lenient here. Genuinely did not have a single warrant, and cross-sex should be sufficient answer. If they just say that we read a normally justified framework because the state is racist, this is not how field debate works. You are reading an impact justified framework. You have said the reason why racism and oppression is bad is because the impact to that would be bad, but you have not started from a metaphysical truth claim about the nature of morality that can justify a comprehensive theory of justice, which can just describe why that sort of oppression is bad. For example, when you see a bill after you inherently know that it is justified why oppression is bad through system of normativity and ideal theory, but you know that the one you see is not because they have not started from a starting point that explains where morality comes from. This is sufficient to answer the I need because it genuinely did not have a warrant. In the one here, the second argument was that I'll just extend all the standards here because all of the studies from B1 and C were functionally dropped and they just have no warrant lines on it, which should not be enough for you to check out and vote app. I'll extend the Brandt evidence first. You conceded that it turns the app method. Studies confirm that moral frames are more persuasive and heighten moral conviction, while non-moral frames make us more certain and extreme. That outweighs one. It experimentally disproves all of the criticisms of normativity that they made on the counter-interpretation, and two, it straight turns all of their subjectivity shift arguments because normativity is a prerequisite to changing people's behaviors without a double down is proven. This argument is indexed to having the absence of normativity from resistance movements, and all of their cards are not specific to having normativity or philosophical justification for it, which means it outweighs on specificity. Also, I'll extend the 3-point for Phil education from the first show, which was also dropped. You conceded that Phil education controls the internal subjectivity shift because it's the only way to rationally convince people of why we know that oppression is bad, which means that it is a voter and outweighs all of the counter-interpretive offense. The other part, which is damning for them to concede, is the dissenting in York 15 evidence because it proves that justice-based reasoning is significantly correlated with empathy for others, which creates a strong motivation to act against perceived inequality. The study specifically says that mere emotional appeals, which is what the affirmative is, are not enough to motivate acting against injustice. That outweighs, again, it proves all of their counter-interpretive offense is incoherent, but it also proves that there's no way to engage in the affirmative's method of disrupting oppression in the carceral state because justifying a comprehensive theory of justice is the only way to ensure that people engage with those movements that the alternative advocacy would advocate for. That's sufficient to just not even look at the counter because they have a bunch of empiric claims without empiric warrants. Well, we have studies which they themselves have conceded to the authority of by reading a bunch of studies that prove that double down does not happen in the 1AR and the 1AC. I'll do the limelight of the arguments. Now, first they say that it's not real world context. Incoherent, your app is all about hypothetical debates that change something, but you have studies which proves that our arguments are uncontested. Additionally, they just do not have a reason for why our model of debate is mutually exclusive with theirs. Our argument is a supplement to that, which means a concession of competing interpretations should frame your ballot out. They have no offensive reasons to not prefer normativity, which means that there's no way that you're voting affirmative in this debate because competing interpretations means that the only thing that matters is offense, defense, paradigm. The second argument that they had was material struggle philosophies do not create change. This makes no sense. All of your literature is a product of philosophy and the understandings of people who develop that literature. For example, Warren is based on Heidegger, Nietzsche, etc., which proves that you have to have a normative understanding of why specific forms of oppression are bad in order to actually motivate people to follow them. Every single form of literature that they have read in the 1AC can trace itself back to a philosophical justification. Just because you've lost sight of that does not mean that that's something which is bad. They say NGS or white literature. This genuinely did not have a warrant in the 1AR again. They just spread off of the dog also means a voting issue because it pathologizes all black people or people of color who have ever decided to read a field position which have been written by all sorts of white, sorts of folks, not just white folks. They say spillover is ahistorical and that they have real empirics. This does not prove that our strategy is not a good supplement to it. Think about it this way: MLK was a form of normativity because he used, for example, Christianity and this sort of starting point philosophy to justify why things like oppression and the Civil Rights Act wouldn't necessarily be good. And additionally, again, this concession of competing interpretations should take this out because they do not have a reason for why this is necessarily mutually exclusive with having a normatively justified framework. The only other arguments I can answer are their bad theory disads, the punishment disad, whoops, I did not read a fairness or an education voter in the 1 and T for a very specific reason, so that I wouldn't have to answer this sort of thing. We have said that our model is a better model than yours, is necessarily more accessible because it encourages people to actually engage with your method, which is not a reason to drop me in the second argument about rule writing, cross-applying the argument from above. You also concede norm-setting model, which means that our argument is not necessarily to drop you for doing something which was bad, but rather to vote us up for a better model of debate, which is functionally their own argument in the affirmative and in cross-section. I asked about what their model of debate looks like. The rule writing argument proper one, there's no warrant norm. It's a norm, not a rule. We're not violently enforcing something upon you, just saying that your affirmative would be better if it was read with philosophical justification and 2 point. I'm not a white person. A white person did not read or write this shell, which means this argument does not have a warrant. Makes no sense. The answers to punishment above should take it out. They're functioning the same argument. The last argument that they have for why field education is not a voter is that its LD debate cannot be constitutionally based on morals because I couldn't find a partner for policy. That's on a warrant. That should be sufficient to reject this argument. Even if you couldn't find a partner for policy, LD debate is still good because of all the cards, which proves that normativity and ideal theory is a better method for actualizing the method that the affirmative talks about. This debate should be very, very simple. You have a bunch of taglines, claims with no warrants. The 2AR must have a warrant after the claim which you did not float in the 1AR because there were none.
Alright, 1 minute, 20 seconds. Case and JF. Everyone good? Perfect. Extend the method of carceral fugitivity, which treats debate as a space for future black study that refuses carceral logic, independently bargaining, liberal legality, debates on logic, construction, and rules of procedure. You must refuse to call to order the demand, efficiency, confession, and judgment technology, replace it with practices of world-making prophetic organization in coalition with and for each other. This looks like several black radical thought and lived experiences as legitimate evidence and arguments that we deliberate over. We must theorize resistance strategies on alternative worlds and represent success through debate. This is a debate about debate. There is no subjectivity or spillover impacts on the negative that they're able to isolate off the shell, which means it's started at a build affirmative. Autocratic violence and movement building should be the only important impacts to consider because only those have real effects on real people and can change the state of debate for good. The reason there's no risk on their side because we're not going to go for anything your side explained, they didn't extend it, but they didn't explain anything whatsoever how voting negative means that me and other debaters are reading normatively justified frameworks or syllogism, but then conceding the fact that our model is specifically key because it has deliberation over material strategies that we can export to the real world so that debaters who don't care who actually engage in these forms of real grass movements can actually theorize and test these strategies in and around. That's what the BLM did, that's what the civil rights movement did. That's all over. They also conceded actually I'll get to that later. And independently voting negative does nothing, even if my app would have been better if I hadn't normally justified framework or solution, that does not mean that their theory shell is good and like an NJF would be better, that doesn't mean that we don't have an impact. Affirmative would still be better for every single school over claim that I'll say now. But the evidence for the movements like BLM, so right movements really won't change. Moving entities these same forms of study and deliberation about execution of their strategy because it allows them to theorize plan and release tests, which means we know how strategies we can actually export, they're going to be effective, even if our actors actually look to the Louisville Project leaders of beautiful struggle that proves that debate can be a space for theorization strategies that can be exported into the real world. Yeah, and then on their studies that they like mentioned, the NGO. Actually, no, extend the counter-interpretation. I don't have to read it normally just by framework. Their studies were really bad because they can see that these are just hypothetical studies that have not shown material action or change in the real world. It's ahistorical because they conceded that even though like Louisville and LBS have not used normally just by frameworks or solutions, they were still able to create change in the real world. Same with MLK. MLK cannot make speeches about syllogisms or non-domination. He gives speeches about actual strategies and how we can unite the community and build solidarity, which means that their argument is completely ahistorical. Yeah, they say our act is emotional appeals, which is bad, and it's not like actual syllogism. It's not an emotional appeal, it's a practical deliberation of real world strategies. Their evidence are also only about morality, not necessarily about normatively justified framework, so that extent that I mean racism is immoral, and we make normatively justified claim about how the state is structured and built on slavery, which means that we definitely meet. They also concede that this is dominated by white authors and devalues black medical thought, because now we can't have arguments and discussions about things like Black Panther Party, which obviously matter way more than actually create real world change. Basically, the main reason you're voting affirmative is because the only actual real world subjectivity or spillover impact comes from the affirmative. We can agree that their interpretation may be good in general, but if it looks really a norm setting model, only deliberations in our model, like only deliberations of real world strategies can create real world change.
Good.